The entire estate is to be transferred to Vivian and her son, Caleb. The lawyer's voice echoed through the sterile office like a death sentence. I sat frozen in the leather chair, my fingers gripping the armrests so hard my knuckles turned white. Dad wouldn't look at me. He just stared at the paperwork in front of him while his wife Vivian smiled that smug little smile I'd learned to hate. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out at first. Finally, I managed to whisper, "Dad, I took care of you for 5 years." He shifted in his seat, still avoiding my eyes. "You never did it out of love, Tessa." The words hit me like a slap. Vivian reached over and squeezed his hand, her diamond rings catching the fluorescent light. Caleb, her 26-year-old son, leaned back in his chair with his arms crossed, looking bored. My throat burned with tears I refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of them. I stood up slowly, my legs shaking beneath me. "You just buried the wrong daughter," I said quietly, then walked out of that office and didn't look back. "My name is Tessa Rowan, and I just got erased by my own father." I drove home from the lawyer's office in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight they ached. The radio played some cheerful pop song that made me want to scream. I turned it off and drove in silence, replaying every sacrifice I'd made. 5 years ago, when Mom died from cancer, I put my nursing school on hold to take care of Dad. I paid her hospital bills with money I'd saved for my education. I cleaned his wounds after his back surgery. I cooked his meals, organized his medications, drove him to every doctor's appointment. I gave up job opportunities, relationships, my entire life. And for what? To be told I never loved him? I pulled into my tiny apartment complex and sat in the car for 10 minutes, staring at nothing. When I finally went inside, I threw my keys against the wall and let myself collapse onto the couch. That's when my phone buzzed. A text from Vivian, "Don't come around the house anymore. It's not yours." I stared at the message, then deleted Dad's contact from my phone. "Fine," I whispered to the empty room. "Then I'll start over." The next morning, I went back to Dad's house one last time to get my things. I'd been staying in the guest room for the past 3 years, ever since he married Vivian. She'd made it clear from day one that I was in her way. I packed my clothes, my mother's jewelry box, and the few photo albums Dad hadn't thrown out. Downstairs, I could hear laughter. Dad and Vivian were having breakfast with Caleb, talking about their plans to renovate the house. My house. The house where Mom and I used to bake cookies on Sunday afternoons. Where Dad taught me to ride a bike in the driveway. Where we scattered Mom's ashes in the garden she loved. Now it belonged to strangers. I carried my boxes to the car in 3 trips. Nobody came to help. Nobody asked where I was going. As I loaded the last box, I looked up and saw Dad and Vivian standing on the porch, watching me like I was some kind of intruder. I got in my car and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw them turn and go back inside. I whispered, "You'll regret this," and drove away. 10 miles down the highway, my car started making a horrible grinding sound, and then it just died. I coasted to the shoulder of the road and tried to restart the engine. Nothing. I called a tow truck, and the driver told me it would cost $800 to fix. I had $300 in my bank account. The tow driver felt sorry for me and dropped me at a cheap motel near the highway. It was the kind of place with stained carpets and a vending machine that only took exact change. I sat on the sagging bed and cried harder than I had in years. I was alone, broke, and angry at everyone. Angry at Dad for choosing Vivian over me. Angry at Mom for dying and leaving me to deal with this. Angry at myself for wasting 5 years of my life on someone who didn't care. But somewhere in that darkness, something clicked. If Dad could rebuild his life without me, then I could do the same. I wiped my face, opened my laptop, and searched for nursing jobs in nearby cities. My license was still active. Within an hour, I'd sent out 15 applications. At midnight, one hospital replied, "We have a night shift opening. Can you start Monday?" I typed back yes and allowed myself the smallest smile. Let's see who survives without whom. The night shift at Mercy General Hospital was brutal. I worked from 11 at night until 7 in the morning, taking care of elderly patients who couldn't sleep and needed someone to talk to. Most of them had been abandoned by their families. Their kids were too busy, their spouses had died, their friends had forgotten them. I understood them in a way I never had before. One patient, an 8-year-old man named Walter, told me his son hadn't visited in 3 years. I gave him everything, Walter said, staring at the ceiling. Paid for his college, his wedding, his first house. Now he can't even return my calls. I held his hand. I know exactly how you feel. Walter looked at me with watery eyes. Then don't waste your love on people who don't value it, sweetheart. You're young. Start over. That conversation changed something in me. I'd been thinking about Mom's dream for years. She always wanted to open a care home where seniors were treated like family, not patients. A place with home-cooked meals, gardens, and people who actually cared. I decided right then that I would make it happen. Not for Dad. For Mom. And for me. During my lunch breaks, I started sketching business plans on napkins. I researched licensing requirements, wrote out budgets, and dreamed bigger than I had in years. I named the project the Rowan Home after my mother, the only person who ever truly believed in me. My coworker Anya, a kind woman in her 40s who worked the same shift, noticed my notes one night. "What's all this?" she asked. I explained my idea, expecting her to tell me I was crazy. Instead, her eyes lit up. "I've been wanting to leave hospital work for years," she said. "If you're serious, I'm in." We started small. On our days off, we went door to door offering private caregiving services to seniors who needed help at home. We charged reasonable rates and treated every client like family. Word spread quickly. Within 2 months, we had 12 regular clients and enough money saved to rent a small house. Then I saw something online that made my blood boil. Caleb had posted a photo of himself in a suit, standing in front of a fancy office building. The caption read, "Excited to announce our family's successful new business expansion." Vivian had commented with 3 heart emojis and #blessed. I stared at my phone and muttered, "Enjoy it while it lasts." One afternoon, I was helping a client named Mrs. Patterson organize her medications when her daughter stopped by. The daughter, a woman in her 50s named Helen, seemed surprised to see me. "Rowan," she said, reading my name tag. "Are you related to Rowan Estates?" I froze. "That's my father's company." "Why?" Helen's face darkened. "My husband invested $50,000 with them last year. They promised a 20% return in 6 months. We haven't seen a cent, and now they won't return our calls." My stomach dropped. "When did this happen?" 3 months ago. We've talked to other investors. There are at least a dozen families in the same situation. After Helen left, I sat in my car and stared at the steering wheel. Dad's company had always been successful, but I hadn't paid attention to the details. I'd been too busy taking care of him. Now Vivian and Caleb were running it into the ground and scamming people in the process. Part of me wanted to expose them immediately, but another part, the smarter part, told me to wait. The truth always finds its way to the surface. I just had to be patient. I drove home and filed Helen's story away in my mind. Someday, it would matter. 6 months after leaving Dad's house, Anya and I signed the lease on a real care home. It was a small 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood, with 4 bedrooms and a backyard that needed work. We spent every spare moment painting walls, fixing broken cabinets, and planting flowers in the garden. Every dollar we earned went into that house. We furnished it with second-hand furniture that we refinished ourselves. We hung cheerful curtains and filled the rooms with plants. It wasn't fancy, but it was full of love. Our first resident was Walter from the hospital. He cried when we picked him up. "I never thought I'd have a real home again," he said. Within a month, all 4 rooms were full. We cooked meals together, played cards in the evenings, and celebrated birthdays like they were holidays. I posted photos of the home on social media, and the response was overwhelming. People called it a beautiful example of what elder care should be. Donations came in. Volunteers offered to help. For the first time in years, I felt proud of something I'd built. Then, one morning, I was scrolling through the news when I saw a headline, "Rowan Estates faces fraud investigation." My coffee went cold in my hand. The news story detailed everything. Investors had filed complaints with the state. The company had taken money without proper documentation. There were accusations of forged signatures and missing funds. Vivian appeared in a video interview, her fake smile cracking under the reporter's questions. "This is all a misunderstanding," she stammered. "Our accountants made some errors." Caleb stood beside her, silent and pale, while the reporter pressed for answers. Then the camera cut to Dad. He looked 20 years older, his face ashen and hollow. He mumbled something about looking into it before hurrying away from the cameras. I watched the segment 3 times, sitting alone in my small apartment. I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. Karma had moved faster than I expected. That night, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, I heard Dad's voice, shaky and desperate. "Tess, I know I don't deserve to ask, but I need your help. Please call me back." I stared at the phone for a long time. Then I deleted the message and went to bed. It was the first night in years I slept without guilt. Over the next week, Dad called 6 more times. I didn't answer. Vivian called too, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Tessa, your father is struggling. We made mistakes, but family should stick together." I hung up without saying a word. Anya noticed I was distracted at work. "You okay?" she asked one evening while we were preparing dinner for the residents. "My dad's business is collapsing," I said quietly. "And he wants my help." Anya set down the knife she was holding. "What are you going to do?" I shrugged. "Nothing. He made his choice." But late that night, alone in my apartment, I replayed Dad's voicemail one more time. His voice cracked when he said my name. He sounded broken. Part of me wanted to ignore him forever. He deserved it after what he did to me. But another part of me, the part that still remembered who he was before Vivian, felt something stir. Was it hate? Sadness? I couldn't tell. I stared at my phone for an hour, my finger hovering over the call button. Finally, I set it down and whispered, "Not yet." I wasn't ready to face him. And maybe I never would be. 2 weeks later, Vivian called from a different number. This time, I answered. "What do you want?" I said coldly. "He's dying, Tessa." Her voice was different now. Not smug. Not fake. Just desperate. The stress from the investigation triggered a heart attack. "He's in the hospital." I sat down slowly. "And?" "Caleb left. He took what money we had left and disappeared. Your father has nobody." I almost laughed. "You're telling me that now I'm his only hope?" "I know you hate me," Vivian said quietly. "But he's asking for you. He won't last much longer." My hands were shaking. "He told me I never loved him. He chose you over me. Why would I help him now?" "Because you're a better person than we are," she whispered. Then she hung up. I sat there for 20 minutes, staring at the wall. Every logical part of me screamed to stay away. He didn't deserve my forgiveness. He didn't deserve my time. But I couldn't forget Walter's words, "Don't waste your love on people who don't value it." The thing was, I wasn't going back for Dad. I was going back for myself. To prove that I could be the person Mom raised me to be, even when it hurt. I drove back to my hometown 3 days later. The streets looked smaller than I remembered, the houses older. When I pulled up to Dad's house, I almost turned around. The lawn was overgrown, the paint was peeling, and the whole place looked like it was rotting from the inside out. I knocked on the door. Vivian answered. She looked exhausted, her hair unwashed, her eyes red. "Thank you for coming," she said quietly. Dad was in the living room, hooked up to an oxygen machine. He'd lost at least 30 pounds. His skin was grey, and his hands trembled on the armrests of his chair. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "Tessa," he whispered. I didn't say anything. I just set down my bag and pulled out my nursing supplies. "I'll help you," I said, my voice flat. "But not for you. For me." He nodded slowly, too weak to argue. I checked his vitals, adjusted his oxygen, and made a list of medications he needed. Vivian hovered nearby, trying to make small talk, but I ignored her. I wasn't here to forgive. I was here to do a job. And when it was done, I'd leave again. That night, Vivian tried to cook dinner. She burned the chicken and oversalted the vegetables. We sat at the table in silence, the tension so thick I could barely breathe. Dad picked at his food but didn't eat much. Vivian kept glancing at me like she wanted to say something. Finally, she snapped. "He needs comfort, Tessa. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I looked up from my plate. Comfort comes from love, not control. The words hung in the air. Vivian's face flushed red. She stood up so fast her chair tipped over. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you?" "No," I said calmly. "I just stopped being worse." She grabbed her purse and stormed out of the house. I heard her car screech down the driveway. Dad sighed heavily. "She's under a lot of stress." "We all are," I said, standing up to clear the dishes. He didn't respond. I washed the plates in silence, then helped Dad to bed. As I tucked the blanket around him, he grabbed my hand. "I'm sorry, Tess." I pulled my hand away gently. "I know. But I didn't say I forgave him. Not yet." The next morning, I was cleaning out Dad's bedroom when I found a small wooden box hidden in the back of his closet. Inside was a letter addressed to me in Mom's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Tessa," it began. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and your father has probably made some terrible mistakes. I know him. I know how he gets when he's scared. If he ever turns his back on you, I need you to remember something. Your worth doesn't come from him. It doesn't come from anyone except yourself. You are strong, kind, and capable of anything you set your mind to. Don't let his fear define you. I love you more than words can say. Always, Mom." I sat on the floor and cried. I cried for the mother I lost, for the father who betrayed me, and for the years I wasted trying to earn love that should have been freely given. But I also cried because I finally understood. Mom knew this would happen. She knew Dad would crumble without her. And she wanted me to be strong enough to survive it. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my pocket. It became my fuel. Word spread quickly through the small town that I was back. People I hadn't seen in years stopped by the house or sent messages. "You're a saint for helping him after what he did. I could never forgive like that. Your mother would be proud." The attention made Vivian furious. One afternoon, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You think everyone loves you now," she hissed. "You think you're some kind of hero." I kept washing dishes, not looking at her. "I think I'm doing what's right. You're making me look bad." I finally turned to face her. "You did that all by yourself." Her hand twitched like she wanted to slap me, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned in close. "You'll always be beneath me, Tessa. No matter what people say." I smiled faintly. "Then why are you the one asking me for help?" She had no answer. She just grabbed her coat and left. Later that night, one of Dad's neighbors called me. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "Your father used to be such a kind man before he married her. Maybe you coming back will remind him who he really is." I wasn't sure I believed that. But I appreciated the thought. Vivian's credit cards started getting declined. She tried to buy groceries and the cashier handed the card back with an apologetic smile. "Sorry, this one's not working either." Vivian's face turned red. She looked at me, standing behind her in line. "Tessa, can you?" "No," I said simply. She abandoned the cart and stormed out. Later that evening, she came to me with tears in her eyes. "I need money. Just a little to get by." I offered to make her a meal instead. She stared at the plate of pasta I set in front of her, then picked it up and threw it against the wall. "I don't want your charity," she screamed. "I want my life back." I calmly grabbed a towel and started wiping tomato sauce off the wall. "You should have thought about that before you scammed innocent people. That was Caleb's idea." I stopped and looked at her. "And you went along with it because you're just as greedy as he is." She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Finally, she whispered, "You'll never understand what it's like to lose everything." I set down the towel. "I lost everything a year ago. The difference is, I rebuilt. She left the room without another word. Caleb showed up 3 weeks later. I was sitting on the porch when a black car pulled into the driveway. He stepped out wearing an expensive suit and sunglasses, like he was some kind of movie star. "Tessa," he said with that fake smile. "Long time no see. What do you want, Caleb?" He sat down on the porch steps without asking. "I need a favor." I almost laughed. "You've got to be kidding. Look, I know things got messy with the business, but I'm working on fixing it. I just need you to talk to some of the investors. Tell them I'm trustworthy." "Why would I do that?" He leaned back, confident as ever. "Because we're family." I stared at him. "You used to call me the family charity case. Remember that?" His smile faltered. "That was a joke." It didn't feel like one. He stood up, irritation flashing across his face. "Fine. I tried to be nice. But you're making a mistake, Tessa. You'll regret this." I watched him drive away and felt absolutely nothing. The power had shifted, and he knew it. That night, Dad finally told me the truth. We were sitting in his room, the oxygen machine humming softly. "I was angry at you," he said quietly. "After your mother died." I looked up. "Angry at me? For what?" "Because you reminded me of her." His voice cracked. "You have her eyes, her kindness. Every time I looked at you, I saw what I lost. And I couldn't handle it." Tears streamed down his face. Vivian made me feel in control again. She didn't remind me of the past. She let me pretend everything was fine. I felt years of pain rising in my chest. "So you let her erase me?" He nodded. "I thought control was love. But I was wrong." It was the first real apology I'd ever gotten from him. Part of me wanted to forgive him right then. But another part needed him to understand the damage he caused. "You didn't just hurt me, Dad," I said quietly. "You taught me that I wasn't worth fighting for. Do you know how long it took me to unlearn that?" He sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Tess." I wiped my eyes. "And now you've lost both of us. Mom and me." He didn't argue. He just cried. Vivian started drinking heavily. I'd find empty wine bottles hidden around the house. One night, she showed up at the Rowan home, stumbling and screaming. "You stole my life," she yelled at me in front of the residents and staff. Anya and another worker gently escorted her outside. She tripped on the front steps and fell, crying into the grass. "He loved me," she sobbed. "He loved me first." I knelt down beside her. "No, Vivian. He loved his money. And when that was gone, so were you." She looked up at me with smeared mascara and hatred in her eyes. "You're just like your mother. Weak and pathetic." I stood up. "My mother was the strongest person I've ever known. And you'll never be half the woman she was." The next morning, Vivian was gone. She left a note saying she was staying with a friend in another state. Dad didn't seem surprised. "She always ran when things got hard," he said quietly. I didn't respond. I just focused on keeping him comfortable. That was all I could do now. A real estate agent named Mr. Bryant called me 2 months later. "I wanted to give you first notice," he said. "Your father's house is being foreclosed. The bank is auctioning it next week." I drove to the house alone. I walked through every room, remembering. The kitchen where Mom taught me to bake. The hallway where we hung family photos. The backyard where Dad built me a swing set when I was 6. It was full of ghosts. But it wasn't home anymore. On auction day, I sat in the back of the room while strangers bid on my childhood. When the gavel came down, I raised my hand. I used the money I'd saved from the Rowan home. Nobody outbid me. The house was mine. Mr. Bryant shook my hand. "Congratulations. I'm sure you'll move back in." I smiled. "Actually, I have other plans." I didn't tell him what they were. I wanted it to be a surprise. For Dad. For the town. For everyone who doubted me. The Rowan house was about to get a second chance. And so was I. A local news reporter named Bethany Mills reached out to interview me about the Rowan home's success. She'd heard about our work and wanted to feature us in a story about compassionate elder care. I agreed. During the interview, Bethany asked about my inspiration. My mother always dreamed of creating a place where seniors felt valued, I said. After she passed, I wanted to honor that dream. And what's next for you? Bethany asked. I smiled. We're opening a new hospice center in the community. A place where every patient feels like family. Where will it be located? I gave her the address. The camera zoomed in on my face as I said it. It was my childhood home. The Rowan house. Bethany's eyes widened. That's beautiful, she whispered. The segment aired 2 days later. My phone exploded with messages. Donations poured in. Volunteers signed up. The town rallied around the project in a way I never expected. And Dad watched the interview from his hospital bed at the Rowan home, where I'd moved him for better care. He cried through the whole thing. Dad's health declined rapidly after that. The doctors said his heart was too weak for surgery. It was only a matter of time. I moved him into the newly renovated Rowan house, into the room that used to be mine when I was a little girl. He looked around with tears streaming down his face. You turned it into something beautiful, he whispered. I gave it purpose, I said gently. The same purpose Mom always wanted. He reached for my hand. I don't deserve this. No, I agreed. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. He nodded and closed his eyes. Over the next few weeks, I spent every evening sitting with him. We didn't talk much. Sometimes I read to him. Sometimes we just sat in comfortable silence. One night, he looked at me and said, "You're a better person than I ever was." I squeezed his hand. I'm trying to be the person Mom raised me to be. She'd be so proud of you, Tess. I had to look away so he wouldn't see me cry. I hope so, I whispered. On his final night, Dad could barely speak. His breathing was shallow, and his skin was cold. I sat beside his bed, holding his hand. I wish I could undo it all, he whispered. I wish I could go back and choose you. I leaned closer. You can't change the past, Dad. But I forgave you anyway. His eyes filled with tears. Why? Because holding on to anger would have destroyed me. And I'm not going to let you take any more of my life than you already did. He smiled faintly. You're free now. Yes, I said softly. I am. He closed his eyes and took one last shaky breath. Then he was gone. I sat there for a long time, holding his hand, crying quietly. But they weren't tears of loss. They were tears of release. I'd carried the weight of his rejection for so long. And now, finally, I could let it go. I kissed his forehead and whispered, "Goodbye, Dad." Then I walked out of that room and into the rest of my life. The funeral was small. Caleb didn't show up. I wasn't surprised. Vivian sat in the back row, wearing black and looking miserable. A few townspeople came to pay their respects, but mostly, it was just me and the staff from the Rowan home. I didn't speak at the service. I didn't have anything left to say. Instead, I laid a single white rose on his casket and walked away. After the burial, a few people stopped me to offer condolences. You did right by him, one elderly woman said. Even after everything. I nodded politely. Thank you. But the truth was, I hadn't done it for him. I'd done it for me. To prove that I could rise above the pain and become someone my mother would be proud of. As I drove away from the cemetery, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't carrying his guilt anymore. I wasn't carrying anyone's expectations. I was finally, completely free. And it felt like coming home. 6 months later, the Rowan home was thriving. We'd expanded to a second location and hired 10 new staff members. The original house, my childhood home, had become the most successful hospice center in the county. I stood in the garden one morning, watching residents laugh and play cards under the shade of the old oak tree Mom had planted 20 years ago. Anya walked up beside me. You did it, she said. You really did it. I smiled. We did it. She nudged my shoulder. Your mom would be so proud. I looked up at the sky, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. I hope so. That evening, a young woman called asking about volunteer opportunities. She told me her father had cut her out of his life, and she was struggling to find purpose again. "Come by tomorrow," I said gently. "We'd love to have you." After I hung up, I stood on the porch and looked at the sign above the door, the Rowan home. I'd started with nothing. No money, no family, no plan. And I'd built something real. Something that mattered. I used to think revenge meant making them suffer. Now I knew the truth. Revenge meant never letting them break you. And I'd never been more whole.